Hello, this will be a tutorial showing how to set up a printer on Repetier host version 2.1.3 and go over some object placement. So first things first, let's get into printer settings. So up here in the top right corner, double click this. First you want to select which printer that you are configuring the settings for. You can have as many different printers as you want. Just type in whichever printer up here, whatever it is, and then at the end hit apply, and that will be new settings for that printer. But for this, I'll go over the Smart Maker settings that I have for the Smart Maker that I use. So first thing, connection. This is the type of connection that you have. So serial connection is through USB. There's IP connection, virtual printer, or Repetier server. You can see this little box wants me to use Repetier server, but I'm going to stick with USB. Port is the USB port at which your computer is connected to. I'd leave it on auto detect. Your computer does a pretty good job at detecting which one the printer is connected to. Baud rate. That's the rate at which information is transferred between the printer and the computer. Baud rate's a firmware setting, so look for that setting in your user manual of your computer and type it in. Well, select which one it is. Transfer protocol. Leave that on auto detect. You can use ACS2 or Repetier protocol, but auto detect's fine, really. Reset on emergency. So what happens when your printer loses connection to the computer? So here I have it set up so it'll attempt to reconnect. So if all things go wrong, it'll at least try to reconnect. Receive cache size and communication timeout. Those are also settings you can find on your computer, or you can just leave them default settings. Use ping pong communication. Leave this box unchecked because that's really just going to slow everything down between the communication, because it's essentially doubling the time it takes, because between each signal it sends an extra one to make sure it's listening, essentially. So it's really unnecessary. So next, we'll get to the printer settings. So travel feed rate, that's the rate at which the x-axis moves and y-axis moves. Z-axis is pretty simple, the rate at which z-axis moves. Manual extrusion speed, and all these manual retraction speeds, that's if you're over here in manual control. I don't have my printer connected right now, or these would all be highlighted, but these are the speeds at which your manual controls would act on your computer. If you have a heated bed, you can adjust the temperature at which you excuse me, have the bed heated at. For this Smart Maker, we keep it at 60 degrees Celsius. This little bar here tells your computer or the printer to check the temperature of the extruder every 1 second, 2 seconds to a minute, but you don't want it to be checking the temperature every minute, so leave it around 3 seconds. Well, I think it's where it was, but that's not that important. Next, let's get into the extruder. So if you have multiple extruders, that's awesome. So if you can go up to, I think, 16 or something like that. Yeah, you can't go any more than 16. If you have 16 extruders, that would be pretty incredible, or even more than one. That's pretty awesome. But for each extruder that you select, you can you'll have different settings that you can put into them, like the color, the heat, and temperature, and all that stuff. But I only have one. I'm probably changing up all the settings for this, but let's just keep it at one. You can change the color of the extruder. This really isn't that important. It's not really going to affect how your prints come out. It's just telling Repetier what color to load up your part in, depending on which extruder you have selected. I'll show you that later. I'll leave it on blue, just because that's what we'll keep it on. Okie dokie. So, number of fans, that tells Repetier how many fans your computer has. Max extruder temp, you set your extruder temperature depending if you have PLA or ABS. Printer shape is next. Max bed temperature is also, pretty self-explanatory. So, printer shape. So this tells Repetier the shape of your printer. So X and Y is the dimensions of the print bed, and then the Z is how high or tall your printer is. So that's these settings here. Right, this printer, this SmartMaker is 223 with a height of 305. These coordinates, I'm going to call them coordinates, tell your printer where the home is that the extruder will go back to each time. The home right now is just 000. Makes sense. Next is the scripts in advanced. So these are kind of unnecessary for your typical user. This is where you can actually write the G code for your computer and edit it and run it. But we'll just stick to the basic settings right now. So once you get that all planned out, hit apply. And then let's come over here next and get into some object placement. Let me get this out of here. So object placement. So I have a great little test print downloaded right now from Thingiverse. It's called a Benchy. So it is essentially just a little boat that's really great at testing the bridging capabilities of your printer. So once it gets loaded up, and what I did when I loaded it, I should have said I came over here to load and selected the one, but it's pretty simple. So here we go. So here's this cute little boat. And the reason why it's great for testing your printer is that these bridges here and having to come back, and it really checks the how accurate, if that makes sense, your 3D printer is. Anyways, so these options over here check which orientation, can change the orientation in which you're viewing it, or you can just use the left mouse button on your mouse and click and drag it around however you want. You can also click the oh, it doesn't want me to do it right now, but let's get into scaling it. So if you want to make it bigger or smaller, you can come over here and type in 5 times bigger, and now you have a huge Benchy, as it's called, or a huge boat. But that's way too big for our print area, so let's scale back down to 2. But if you want to print it the maximum size that your printer could do, I don't know why you'd ever want to do that. That'd be a huge way to fill it, but you can scale it to the maximum size that your printer could do in that dimension. Sometimes, you want to print your file in the best orientation so it uses the least amount of material. So right now it's already oriented how I'd want to print it, but say it was at some weird angle like this. You don't want to print it like that, obviously. You want to print with this flat side down. So you can manually change the degrees and flip it around and stuff. If you ever get lost in your orientations and you just want to start over, you can click reset orientation and you start from the beginning. This rotates around the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis. Also, lay flat, that's a good one to use if you're not sure if the file is perfectly horizontal to the print bed. Once you get it in the orientation that you like, click lay flat, and Repetier will run a few little code to make sure that it is laying actually horizontal to the print bed. What next? So copy object. So that's this right here. We were just in rotate. That's what we're in right now, rotate. But I always copy objects last, because if you upload 4 copies, then you're going to have to rotate them all individually, and it just takes extra time. So once you figure out the orientation at which you want your boat, this is kind of a weird orientation. Let's just make this 0. 0, so now, okay, makes sense, right? Once you figure out the orientation you want it, and you want more than 1 copy, come over here, and be careful with this, because 1 copy is going to produce 2 models. So and it's basically, this is saying how many more do you want than the one you already have here. So if you do 3, that's going to give you a total of 4, and then copy. But we can't do that. Too many Yeah, because it's way too big. So let's make it a little smaller. Let's scale it back down. So right now it's way too big. So let's make a little benchy, for example. Let's delete these. Hold on. Let's go back. Okay. It created those copies, and then it was just kind of getting all confused about what I wanted to do. 3D benchy. Okay, here we go. So let's scale it back down to 1. Bam. All right. And now let's insert some copies. So same thing, you know, keep in mind that this is always going to make one more than what it says. And then copy. And you'll get 3 little benchies. 3 more benchies, I should have said. So a total of 4. Another important thing is the orientation. Where is that? So zoom to fit. Let's go over that. So if you import something and it's like way small or something way zoomed in, like, and you're like trying to rotate and you're like whacked out, confused at like where you are, click the zoom to fit, and it'll just automatically give you the best view in which to view your objects. Object auto position. That's what I wanted to show you. So if you have your models and they're like in weird orientations, you can click auto position, and right now it doesn't do anything because it's at the best orientation that Repetier thinks. But if you had these at weird placements, you know, one in this corner, one in that corner, you clicked auto position, it would put them in the best way. So essentially Repetier's putting them in the correct position, so the extruder doesn't have to travel excessive distances between the prints. Next, center objects. That's really not that necessary, so I don't know what it just did right there, actually. Let's do auto position. And alright, now it's back to normal. So that's it. That was an example of when you'd want to use auto position. Scale objects, already went over that. Rotate objects. And what's this? View cross sections. Yep, this is pretty cool. So if you want to view a cross section image of like the layer, the individual layer that's going to be printed, you can drag this little cursor down, or you can change the angle of the cross section. I totally just made it disappear, but you kind of see what's going on. It's pretty neat to show you actually like the individual layers that are getting printed, and it gives you a nice visualization of why you need support material, because when it starts printing the bridge here, you know, you need something to print on, so it has to print support material there. Anyways, so let's go back to zoom objects to fit to go back to the original view. Anyways, so that was a brief tutorial of printer settings and how to orient your object for the best way to print it. Anyways, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.